creeps up your spine when something just doesn't feel right. The one where you can sense a presence lurking just beyond your peripheral vision, but when you turn, there's nothing there. That's how it all started for Ravi. He had heard the stories. Who hasn't? Tales whispered between friends, from elders, or even from the local priest. But Ravi, a man of science, always scoffed at them. Ghosts, jinns, superstitions. He'd laugh, his words floating through the stale air of the small village he called home. It was a sweltering summer afternoon when Ravi's curiosity led him to an old, decrepit house at the edge of the village. It was a house everyone avoided, speaking in hushed tones whenever its name came up. The house had been abandoned for years, and no one really knew who had lived there before, nor why it had been left to rot. But Ravi, always in search of adventure, couldn't resist. He had to see it for himself. As he approached, the house stood like a forgotten titan. Windows boarded up with planks, the front door hanging crooked on its rusted hinges. The air around it felt thick, as though the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something, or someone, to enter. Ravi hesitated at the doorstep, but only for a second. Just an old house, he muttered to himself, pushing open the door with a creak that echoed in the silence. Inside, the house was dark, far darker than it should have been in broad daylight. The musty smell of rot and decay clung to the air. Dust danced lazily in the thin beams of sunlight that managed to slip through the cracks. Ravi's footsteps echoed like a drumbeat on the wooden floor, unsettling him more than he wanted to admit. He made his way through the rooms, his flashlight illuminating peeling wallpaper, broken furniture, and cobwebs thick enough to drown a spider. But then he heard it, a faint whisper, so soft that he thought he might have imagined it. Get out, get out. Ravi's heart skipped a beat. He froze. The voice was coming from upstairs, where the staircase loomed like a dark abyss. He should have left then, but curiosity pushed him forward. It's just the wind, he thought, though deep down, he didn't believe that for a second. The stairs creaked under his weight as he ascended, each step seemingly groaning louder than the last. And then, at the top of the stairs, something caught his eye. A door slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning him in. It was the only room with a hint of light filtering through the cracks in the walls. He pushed the door open, and the room inside chilled him to the core. The walls were lined with old, faded photographs. But what unnerved Ravi wasn't the age of the pictures. It was the faces in them. They were all of the same man. A man he had never seen before, yet there was something hauntingly familiar about him. His eyes, dark and hollow, seemed to follow Ravi wherever he moved, the gaze cold and unblinking. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and Ravi felt a presence behind him. He spun around, his flashlight trembling in his hands, but there was nothing. Only the shadowed corners of the room, their darkness seeming to stretch toward him. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it, a fleeting movement, a figure, barely visible, standing in the doorway. Ravi's breath caught in his throat. He could feel his heart pounding against his chest as the figure stepped forward, emerging from the shadows. A woman. Her skin was pale as bone, her hair dark and matted, and her eyes, those eyes, were wide, unblinking, and full of something that made Ravi's stomach churn. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, in a voice that was neither male nor female, but something in between. Ravi stumbled backward, his body colliding with the wall. The room seemed to close in on him, the walls pulsing with a low, guttural hum. He turned, frantic, desperate to escape, but the door was gone. The once solid frame had disappeared, replaced with an impenetrable wall of blackness. The woman's woman's voice echoed again, louder this time, her words slipping into Ravi's mind like a poison. Leave this place. Leave, or be part of it forever. Ravi's legs gave way beneath him as the room seemed to twist and bend, the air thick with the scent of decay. His mind screamed for him to run, but his body refused to move. His vision blurred, and the last thing he saw was the woman, her face now inches from his, her hollow eyes reflecting nothing but death. The next morning, the villagers found the house quiet, as it had always been. But Ravi was gone. No sign of him, no footprints, no trace. It was as if the house had swallowed him whole. Years passed. The house stood, as it always had, silent, foreboding, and unchanged. But occasionally, when the wind was right, the villagers swore they could hear the faintest whispering from within, a voice calling out for help,